Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies as we continue with Part 3, The Marked Degree of the Higher Degrees Handbook by JSM Ward. Chapter 2, The Marked Degree. Those of my readers who have already studied the first 3 handbooks of this series will realize that the true signs of a Master Mason are not restored to them. The real sign which was lost was comprehension of the nature of God, and our 3rd degree quite clearly indicates that, despite popular beliefs, we shall not be able to comprehend God as soon as we are dead. The craft degrees, in short, takes us through birth, life, and death, and shadow forth the creative, preservative, and destructive sides of the deity. The majority of the other degrees either deal with what befalls a man after death, or else endeavors to explain or fill in certain gaps in that historical narrative which is the allegorical basis of the craft degrees. The marked degree in part belongs to the latter group, and is in reality the completion of the 2nd degree. Unquestionably, a brother should receive his mark when he becomes a fellow craft, and the degree itself still shows strong operative influence. It is ruled by Mark Grand Lodge, which meets and has its offices at the temple in Great Queen Street, next door to the Connaught Rooms. All who love the higher degrees owe a debt of gratitude to Mark Grand Lodge, which has acted as fairy godmother to many of the higher degrees which were left stranded after the Treaty of Union in 1813. Indeed, in many cases it has more or less taken them under its wing, and in consequence, we shall have to refer again and again to the fact that the grand body which rules a particular degree has its headquarters at Mark Mason's Hall. The marked degree has its own regalia and a special jewel, and perhaps our younger brethren will be glad of the warning that, with the exception of the R.A., no jewels of the higher degree may be worn in a craft lodge. The jewel of the marked degree consists of a keystone, made usually of white cornelia, on which are engraved certain mystic letters, the meaning of which are revealed to members of the degree. It is suspended from a blue and red ribbon. The aprons and collars are also made of blue and red silk. The teachings of this degree is largely an amplification of the 2nd, and tells of education and reward for labor. It also contains a dramatic warning against attempting to obtain wages to which we are not justly entitled, and there is a messianic hint in the fact that the stone which the builders rejected has become the headstone of the corner. Incidentally, the stone is a keystone, hence the origin of the jewel of the degree. Several facts lead us to suspect that at one time the degree may have been more pronouncedly Christian than it is today. We know that it was flourishing as far back as 1760 in lodges attached to the ancients, who were unquestionably strongly pro-Christian. The legend as now given relates to a period in the building of the temple previous to the tragedy, although there is abundant evidence to show that as late as the time of the formation of Mark Grand Lodge, 1856, many Mark lodges in the north had a somewhat similar legend to that now used, but associated it with the 2nd temple instead of with the 1st. Mark, therefore, is, or should be, really part of our craft system, and in Scotland craft lodges still have the power to confer it, and consistently do so. In that country, it is a necessary qualification for the excellent master, which itself is an essential qualification for the Royal Arch. We shall refer to the excellent master more fully when we come to the Royal Arch, but it is desirable to point out that in Scotland Royal Arch chapters also have the right to confer the marked degree if a candidate has not already taken it in his craft lodge. The mark, as we have said, is the completion of the second degree, and in itself contains what are practically 2 degrees, namely Mark Man and Mark Master. There has been much learned controversy as to whether the Mark Master was at one time conferred on a man as soon as he received his second degree, since it is impossible at the moment to decide when the Mark degrees arose in their present form. All we can say definitely is that, so far as documentary evidence goes, i.e., back to 1760, it appears as if there were always the degrees of Mark Man and Mark Master. At that, although at any rate in theory, Mark Man might be conferred on a fellow craft, Mark Master seems always to have been restricted to Master Masons. In modern times, both Mark degrees are conferred together and always on a Master Mason, although the Mark ritual throughout emphasizes the connection with the second degree. The Ark Mariner. The Mark degree, or degrees, always have associated with them, but in a separate lodge, the Royal Arch Mariner degree. This appears to be old operative work, probably built up in the 18th century by genuine operative masons in the north of England, anxious to have some way of distinguishing a real working mason from a speculative. The same explanation probably brought into existence the degree of St. Lawrence the Martyr, of which more anon the Ark Mariner legend relates to the deluge and is taken direct from the Bible. The most interesting features are the use of a stone instead of the volume of the sacred law on which to take the obligation. The reason for this is explained in the ritual, but it may be that we have here a survival of the old custom of swearing on a stone altar, which was the earliest form of a binding oath. There is also some interesting work with a triangle, but in the main it must be confessed that there is not much really deep teaching in the degree. It is, however, quite a pretty little degree and has many ardent supporters. It is under the direct rule of Mark Grand Lodge. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.